Well, hi there, Strata Loungers. It's Bill Whittle here with your Stratosphere Lounge Show, episode 117. Ladies' Night. Should have done this a lot earlier, but better late than never, I guess. Where we're taking questions just from the girls tonight, and that's how we're going to do it. By golly. Yeah, I said at the announcement for the show that there's some big news, and there is some big news. I wasn't going to announce it until tomorrow, but a couple people got it in the comments section already, so it's out there. And a couple people have contacted me about this too. Now, everybody hang on because this is going to be a little shaky, but just stay with me on this. I found out yesterday, I think all of us found out, the rest of us found out on Monday, but I found out yesterday that PJTV is basically going to stop producing video content starting, I think next week will be our last week. They're just going to basically shut it down, and they are going to go to there'll be a video page on the PJ Media site, but as far as new content goes, it's all going to go. My first reaction to that was, guys, for to have a job for 8 years in this business is like lifetime employment. I mean, in a gig-based world, 8 years of steady paychecks is simply unbelievable. I've enjoyed working with them so much. They all gave me such an opportunity. I mean, all I'd been was just a blog writer before I started at PJTV. So just adjust this a little bit. So that's the bad news. The good news is that as soon as we got the news, Scotty and I and Steve got on the phone, and we decided that we're going to just pick up Trifecta, that we're not even going to miss a week, that we're going to do our farewell shows next week, and then after that at PJTV, and then we're going to start Trifecta here at billwhittle.com. So what that means is, for a while, for weeks or maybe a month or two, Steve and Scott and I will we will do the show. We'll basically just do it out of pocket. But in order to keep that going, and frankly, in order to keep me going, because that's a big hunk of my income. That's 7 videos a week there for PJTV. In order for me to stay in business, in order for Trifecta to happen, we need to move paying PJTV members over to billwhittle.com, and we have to move at least 1,000 of them. And if we could move 2,000 of them, that would be great. I don't know what the exact number of PJTV subscribers is, but last time I checked, it was a while ago. It was a 4, 5, 6,000, something like that. So it's now a question of really keeping us on the air, and especially at this point of year, it's just as we're starting to get into it. I again, the last thing I want to do is sound in the slightest bit conflicted with these guys. They've been with us. They've been doing this for 8 years, and they were really, really excellent people to work for. They started at the RNC convention in 2008, and I would like to have finished up the election year, but that's not my decision. And again, I just could not be happier of them for this. So, needless to say, we've still got the firewalls, which are going to be coming out more frequently now that I won't have to write afterburners. I found out about whether or not I put in a message as to whether or not they're going to keep the Afterburner brand and the Trifecta brand. But if you are a member at PJTV, you're going to be and an annual member, and rather than a monthly member, you're going to be refunded for the pro rata share on that. So yeah, Doc Kozlowski up there says some of us are members on both sites. Bless you people. But I'll put up a post in the morning basically saying we're going to pick up Trifecta without pause. We're not going to, we'll do our final PJTV shows next week, and the week after that we'll do them at billwhittle.com, and it'll take us a while to iron the bugs out of that. I happen to think that it'll look better. Scott did some recording testing of three panels and stuff, and I've always felt that the graphics could be improved. So that's going to be fun. And if we can get a significant portion of the PJTV subscribers to come over, then we can probably bring the Clavin show back too, which I think would be terrific. But it is in fact going away, and the membership is going away, and so if you're one of those PJTV members that have been paying for Trifecta and Afterburner and all that other stuff, and Clave and Whittle and Hot Seat, we would really not only love to have you come over, we would actually, we need you to come over. Yeah, just a question here is, we're going to redo the intro. Yeah, I hate that intro on Trifecta, to be perfectly honest with you. I really just hate it. So it'll be a new look, and it'll be fun, and it'll be the same show. One of the things that Scott said was that now that we own it, we could make whatever changes we want to. And I thought, hey, that'd be great. Let's send out a call to the membership and see if they have any ideas. There's a possibility that we could, 3 of us, interview a guest or something. We might, do a number of different things. One thought that we had, and PJTV did this, and we'll probably end up doing it too. So I'm sorry, Cheryl just mentioned Cheryl Tomey just mentioned she's gonna miss the Scott Ott thought. I think we can do that as well. I think Scott can do that on his own. But we know that the audiences aren't huge, but they're very, very dedicated, and I think it's really important programming, and it's good for all of us. And Scott and Steve and I, there's a little melancholy for the fact that it's 8 years of our lives. That's a long time. It's 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 episodes of Trifecta, but there was no real sadness on our part, because the instant that we found out about it, the instant. We just said, all right, got off the phone and called each other up and said, we're going to keep this thing going, right? And he said, yep, ready. So that's what we're going to do. And the Scott Ott thought can be done by Scotty on that end. I've got a lot of graphics capabilities here. And I'd like to bring Zoe too. Yes, Doc Kozlowski again. But not to put too fine a point on it, here's the actual brass tacks on the situation financially. That was a big part of my income. It was most of my income. And if that goes away, then I have to get enough of the PJTV members who are already paying to come over to BillWhittle.com and be members over here, just for me to stay in business. We need to do more than that to get the Trifecta guys paid, and then more than that to get Clavin and Zoe and all the rest of it. So we're certainly ready to give it a month or two to move people, but we are, unless the PJTV membership comes over pretty strongly, we're going to be in some trouble. So let's not get into trouble. It's the time when we all need to be pulling together on this. And certainly speaking for myself, just to wrap up this thought, I could not have been happier with the time there. There's always a little head bumping, but they gave me every opportunity, and certainly no one would have known who I was, at least in terms of the videos, without them taking a chance on me and a bunch of other unknown people like Alfonso, Rachel, and Clavin and Crowder, Scott, Steve, a bunch of us. We were just never. We were writers, but we never been on TV, and they made it all happen. So that was good. It was surprising news, as I say. I had not the slightest idea until I found out yesterday morning. I think they're going to make an announcement. Not going to make an announcement. I think the PJTV website starting tomorrow, which would be Thursday, the 14th. Starting on Thursday the 14th, I think they're going to put up a notice at pjtv.com, and then that'll run until I think May 11th. And then after May 11th, anybody who tries to go to the PJTV page will be directed to the PJ Media Slant video page. So they're moving on to some other things. They're keeping most of the staff, I think, over there to produce content for another venture that they're working on. That actually makes me very happy. I don't. The worst part of these shows coming to an end is the idea that your friends are out of work. And I'm hoping, and they've been so far in the initial conversation, we're very, very cool about when I asked about the membership. Would they have a problem with me going after the PJTV members? They said no, it didn't seem like it would be a problem. It seemed like they'd be really cool. Ideally, they'll let me push out an email to the existing PJTV members, because it's important that people know that the Trifecta show and either Afterburner or Firewall is still going on out there, and to show them where. But the one thing we all agreed on was that we couldn't let any time pass Lord Teo asked about Clave and Whittle. That's a show I'd like to do as well. In fact, if we can get enough money to keep me alive and then enough money to keep Trifecta going, then the Claven show I would do again in a heartbeat, because I think that was the best work that's ever not been seen by anybody. I mean, that was really fun television, and I thought it was really bright and deep and cool. And who knows, we may take the Claven show out to something that kinds of a hybrid between the speakeasy segments we were doing and then the Claven show. Maybe both of us will do an interview show. Who knows? Do it live. I'd love to do it live, honestly. The problem with doing it live is that's actually very expensive. That's 5 figures. But we can come up with 5 figures if we get enough members. The good news here is that PJTV was an expensive operation. There was a huge staff there, 20 people. And producers in the facility had multi-million-dollar control room and audio guys and all this other stuff. So we're gonna be having to ramp it up, because we either ramp it up or we ramp it down, and I don't want to ramp it down. So if you have friends who are members over there, we'd love to tell them about it. We're going to spread the word as much as we can starting tomorrow morning, and then we would like to just basically continue this programming under a different. Just under a different website with a different name on the credit card, and then see what happens. So there we go. That's what we'll do, and get producers and trying to keep this thing on schedule. So that's the plan. Anyway, that is the big announcement, and it was certainly big and a big surprise. But again, I couldn't have been more grateful. I can't be more grateful for all the opportunities they gave me. Steve and Scott feel the same way. Steve and Scott and I have probably shared 30 emails today, just getting really fired up about things. He did some video tests and stuff, so I think it's going to come back. I think it's going to look better. Oh, I got off the track. One of the things we were talking about maybe doing, PJTV did 3 trifectas a week on YouTube, and then 2 for members every week. And one thing we're thinking about doing is maybe doing a real-time trifecta for members. If you can kind of watch it live, and maybe we do it kind of with make it a little longer, 15, 20 minutes, take comments from people live, that kind of thing. But whatever we can do to increase the perceived value of the membership, that would be great. And I think we get a chance to really promote it too, in a way that put money behind it and promote it in the way that they didn't do that over there. So anyway, that's that, and it's either going to be good news or bad news, depending on whether or not we can get paying PJTV members to come over to BillWhittle.com and hopefully pay for the shows that they were paying for before. Anyway, as I said, it's ladies' night here at the Stratosphere Lounge, and it's kind of an interesting evening. We lost the Tiemans. They're out of there, but now we're down to about 2 or 3 commenters as well, which is great. So the first one was actually from Cheryl Toomey, who wanted to know, I just received an email that said PJ Media's shows are shutting down. No more Trifecta, Hot Seat, Claven, and Whittle. Scott thought, what is going on at PJTV? That question is asked and answered. Susan Speakman is next. She says, I know all you steely-eyed missile men love your fast cars, big guns, and hot women. It's actually loud guns. Can you occasionally drop a line in about the strong and hot conservative women, too? We also love the fast cars and the big guns, plus we love our own steely-eyed missile men as well. Yeah, I've been really guilty about that. It was one of the things P.G. O'Rourke wrote, one of the many things he wrote that really brought me into conservatism. He was just so cool. I mean, everything he said was just so cool. And one of the things he said was that he was watching a demonstration about something, and he said, all the hot women are on the conservative side now. Back in the 60s, they used to be on the liberal side, but now they're on the conservative side. And he said, wherever the hot women are, that's where the action is. And he's absolutely right. I've been to conventions that have just been mind-boggling, and, needless to say, I'll get back to the, so-called civilians in a minute, but just in terms of the commentary team, Politichicks, those girls are gorgeous. I hung them out all. I've hung out with them a lot. They're just Gina and Anne Marie, and they're all just absolutely gorgeous. And Politichicks are terrific and gorgeous, and we got all kinds of really cool looking people out there. It's not just about being gorgeous, it's just they're well put together. And compared to, have you seen like Janine Garofalo lately? I mean, my God, last time I saw her, which was a couple years ago, really bad bleach blonde, tattoos everywhere, almost on her face, just Michael Moore and well, we're talking about women. Well, so Michael Moore. And it's just shocking, really. I've always felt that it's shocking. So there's that aspect of it. But yes, you're absolutely right. We have so many great conservative women that aren't out in front of the public eye, and they're doing amazing things that are just like really fun. I mean, they're out there at the shooting ranges. I've taken a few women out to shooting ranges. A couple of them have never shot before, and they shot the daylights out of what I was doing. I think an instructor there said that they tend to be a little more relaxed. Maybe they're not trying as hard as the guys are to be crack shots, but they've been terrific out on the range. There are amazing women pilots out there now. They are just kicking butt. I mean, they're flying helicopters, they're flying fighter jets, and here at home, they're not only doing all these things about as well as we are, in many cases better, but they're also holding the families together, which means they're holding the country together, and that's the most important thing. It's not. I'm not trying to reduce conservative women to being moms or housewives or anything like that, although I don't think that's reducing them. I think that's kind of an elevation for certainly a lot of people I know. But in any event, they are in fact doing everything that they were told they could do. They're out there running businesses, running companies. I was working for a woman before I got to PJTV. Many of our producers there were women. But they're not only running businesses and stuff, they're running them well, and then they are also just kicking butt in everything. So that world that was promised to them, you can have a career and a family, is pretty much true. And I guess that's where I was going with this. I'm generalizing because I know there are some single dads out there, but to be able to raise a kid or two, especially by yourself, and to keep out there working and stuff, I simply don't know how they do it. I've seen a bunch of single moms. I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Single dads got to be as rough for them too, but it's absolutely amazing. I wouldn't last a week. I don't think I'd last a weekend. I have nothing but the highest respect for that. So I'm so glad, Susan, that you brought that up. I'll try to be a little better about that in the future, because you're absolutely right. It is in fact, a two-way street there, and I don't know. I think it's just really amazing, the work that they do, and the quality, and the fact that they're there. So yeah, steely-eyed missile men and women out there on the conservative side, pulling lanyards and triggers and revving engines, and also keeping the home fires burning and keeping this machine running. It's so that's the word I was looking for. It's so unsung, just being civilized is just so unsung. Most guys, are certainly I was very, very feral until until I actually started getting some women in my life, and then I learned how to change sheets and open windows and that kind of thing. Living in a bachelor cave for a long time can be alarming, but it's amazing how transformational and civilizing women are. And I think finally, just to close this particular question out, you can make a very compelling case, and I think it's a lot more compelling than even I realize, that virtually everything that men do is just basically showing off for the girls. I mean, there's been innumerable theories that wars are fought to impress the women or to get women. Wars have been fought for resources, so that you can impress women. I think there's a number of things that I've done in my life that I've done that I'm doing this to impress the chicks. So you got to think about that too. I'd be willing to bet you that if you got right down to it, the whole reason there's a civilization is because it was bunch of guys out there trying to impress the women so that they could come into their lives and civilize them. That's pretty much the history of the human race, I think. So thanks for the heads up there, Susan. It's a really good question. I'm really glad we got it. Well, guess who's back? It's Cheryl Toomey again. Seriously, though, we haven't heard about your cortisol for a while now. Everything okay? Sleep regulated? Eating healthy? You're the only one we've got. Skid, take care of the old boy. Thank you very much, Cheryl, and all the rest of you for your concern. Yeah, 2015 was a bad year. I was under enormous stress, and it really peaked in April, and I just was out for almost 2 weeks. And then, the summer came and had some real hard hits personally in the summer, and bought an airplane and had the engine fail after 1.2 hours, and it was just a rough year. Plus, without the firewall income, we were really, really struggling here, just really struggling to hang on. Now we got the firewall income back, and that's great, but now the PJTV income's gone. This is an opportunity, though. I don't mean to keep harping about this, but you could have made a case that it would have been a smart business move some way for me to leave PJTV, because I was a lot of the programming over there. And if I could take about 1,000 members with me to my site, I'd make up the lost income. And if I took more than that, I'd actually be making more money than I would have been working for them. But I never did it, and I never really thought seriously about doing it, because I didn't want to compete with them. I didn't want to look ungrateful. I didn't want to, I didn't want to be the guy that just walked out. And I just, in some level, this is the best possible world if the membership moves. But so just to answer your question on the health, though, Cheryl, it's I'm taking this like a champ. I think if this happened to me last summer, I'd be, you could see this little area back. Where is it? I always got to do this. See right back there in the back against the wall, that little corner right there. Yeah, I'd be curled up in a ball right there. But I'm not. I'm actually very optimistic, and our operations manager here, Carla, has turned this into an actual business, and she and her husband have done so much to make this into an actual business, and that took so much of the pressure and the strain off of me. It took so much of that tension and stress off of me. And we talked about it today, about the PJTV news, and we're like, let's go, man, gear up. Here we go. Let's gear up. So we're as excited as we can be. And we're going to push very, very hard in a way that we haven't pushed before. So the health is doing much better, Cheryl. Thanks for asking. And the plane's flying like just humming along. By the way, I'll just give you a quick update on the plane, because she has another part of this question. I went to Livermore. I didn't even announce that I wasn't doing a Stratosphere Lounge last week. I'm sorry about that. I just forgot. I flew the Long Easy from Van Nuys up to Livermore, where my friend Dana is, and her boyfriend and I spent the night there. The next day was my birthday on Thursday, and I did a speaking event at a Jewish high school up there. It was really interesting. I covered some of that on the Afterburner I shot yesterday. And then I came back Thursday night. I was hoping I'd get in the air at 4 o'clock, but one of the Dana's new boyfriend is aerobatic pilot, so I finally got a chance to take a ride in the pits. We strapped in and fired up the engine around 4:10, 4:15. We went out there, and we just, that airplane is simply, it's just a beast. It's like riding a wild boar. The visibility is not good, and you're sitting real deep in the airplane. You've got the 5-point harness, but you also have an extra seat belt in case the first belt goes, because you're doing a lot of negative G's. We went out and did a bunch of rolls. That was great. Fast rolls, slow rolls, 4-point rolls. I need to work a little more rudder in there. The Long Easy is very forgiving on the rudder. And then we started doing loops, and he pulled a 4G turn to pull. Almost felt like we were going straight up. And that 4G turn actually made me a little queasy. And I knew I had to fly for 2 hours after that, so we went back after that. But it would be incredible. It was an incredible experience. But anyway, regarding my health and just how I'm feeling and psychologically, I ended up leaving Livermore at around 6:30 by the time I took off, and I had a 90-minute flight back. It gets dark at around 8:15. It's pretty near black out here this time of year. So I was coming down the San Joaquin Valley, just humming along at 170 knots, and the plane is just humming. Once we got that actually bolted on the intake manifold instead of just finger tighten it, which was what the problem was. Once we got that thing done, that engine I put 50 hours on it now, and it's just humming. It's humming, and it's just riding like a champ. I'll get the oil changed, and I'll check the inside of the cylinders in the next couple of days with all the free time I have. But the main part of the story was coming back to San Joaquin Valley. I was able to get updates on what was going on at Van Nuys, and I was talking to air traffic control, even as a VFR pilot. It's called flight following. So they're giving me a squawk code, and they're watching me come down the valley. So I've got radar eyes out there. And as we getting about halfway down the valley, it started to rain. And it's not the rain that causes you to lose VFR. It's the visibility. And I knew that it was clear ahead of me, and I also knew there was a big mountain range up at the south end of the San Joaquin Valley. I had synthetic vision on my ForeFlight app, but needless to say, I wasn't going to do anything as stupid as fly through a mountain pass, looking down at my iPad. I would do it if my life depended on it and I had no way out, and I would do it with a lot of confidence. Actually, I have a lot of confidence in it. But I'm not that stupid, and I just looking around, and it was raining, and I thought, well, if I don't get through this stuff as we approach the hills at the end, then I will just simply land. There's hundreds of airports, it seems like, in the San Joaquin Valley. I can see down very clearly. I've got plenty of visibility to do that. It's not like an instrument approach or anything. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I spent about an hour of the plane ride back in pretty intense conditions. It's getting dark, and you're checking your instruments. I have an instrument rating, so I'm just watching the instruments like a hawk, and I'm watching the instruments, and I'm listening to the engine, and we're ingesting a little water, and she just kept on purring. And I put the plane away, landed it at night, put the plane away, and I didn't realize it till the next day, but the next morning when I woke up, I woke up feeling like I really like this plane a lot better now than I did before. I trust it. And this is how trust is built up in people and relationships with supposedly inanimate objects as well. The plane bit me within an hour of having it, but after that, it's behaved itself. It wasn't its fault that they didn't put the manifold thing back on correctly. And we've flown 50 hours to Tucson twice and Livermore twice, and it just has hummed and moved, too, faster than I thought it would be. I never see less than 160 knots, usually 170, 175, occasionally 180, depending on conditions. And once I saw it get up to 190. I had ground speed at 200 once with a pretty decent tailwind, but that's fast. That's in excess of 200 miles an hour once you get up around 180, 190 knots. So couldn't be happier. Anyway, that was the story about my physical health. And then the other part of the question is kind of fun. While we're on the top, also from Cheryl to me, while we're on the topic of health, favorite adult beverage, martini, shaken, not stirred, margarita, tell us. Oh, wise one. I've occasionally had to admit to things on this show that I've been very ashamed of. I've been ashamed of my, my voting record when I was a liberal and other things I've talked about on this show, and I just kind of bull on through it. So I suppose it's what makes a show interesting on some level. So I will answer that question even though I don't want to. It's almost like, when we went through the contents of my iPhone in terms of the music I listen to, which is all over the place. I used to drink Bloody Marys when I was out on the town, and I love them, but they're very hard to make correctly and consistently. Sometimes they're just red water, and sometimes it's just nothing but Tabasco sauce with pepper in it, and it's just really hard to get it right. So I was out having dinner one night, and somebody said, hey, you should try one of these, and it was a martini, and I tried it, and I just loved it. But the problem is, it was a lemon drop martini with like sugar on the rim. It's like the biggest girl's drink in the world. So that's actually my drink now. I love it. I just can't get it. It's just fantastic. It's so delicious. And every time I go out, I'm always so embarrassed. I always, they say, what can we get you? And, it's like, I'd like a lemon drop martini, please. And do you have a Hello Kitty glass that you could put that in for me? Maybe some umbrellas or something that we could stick in there. It was really... It's still I still apologize for it, but my God, those are delicious. There've been a little variation, but I have never had a bad one. They are fantastic, and I got to tell you, as a guy who never held a martini glass until he was probably 55, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And let's see, what else do I like? I'm single malt Scotch is great. It's fun to sit and sip, but I can't drink that on an evening going out for dinner because it'll just, forget about it. Just lay me low. That stuff is delicious. I like Corona beer with a lot of lime in it. I learned that kind of trick back in Key West. I used to drink them with like half a lime in there. Was fun. And I'll tell you what I started liking very much lately, and I start looking for now, because I'm not a big beer drinker, never really been a big beer drinker. But there's a restaurant not far from me, and they've got 5 or 6 of these new hard cider kind of things, and those things are delicious. I was at a Gator game this last summer. I finally caught up with my Gator friends. I hadn't seen them for 3 years because I'd just been so busy. So we were out at this sports bar, and my friend Ron, who's going to put in this Big Bat movie, he's just incredibly brilliant comedian. He was having these hard ciders. So it was a hot day. It was the summer, and I walk in there, and I was really thirsty, and it just tastes like apple juice with a little bite to it. So I put one of them down, a pretty big glass, knock that down, fantastic, delicious. I think I'll have another one. And then I ordered a dinner, some lunch rather, I don't know, cheeseburger or something like that. Thought I'll have another one. And the fourth quarter is running a little long, and I've been eating peanuts all day. I think I'll have a fourth one. And it doesn't let you know how much it hits you, but you have 4 of those big cans of cider in a row, you will know it. So I actually had to sit around, walk it off a little bit, and make sure I wasn't doing anything stupid after that. But yeah, I know it's with the exception of the single malt, which I can drink neat and I love. It's all pretty wimpy. Somebody said don't put fruit in the beer. It's not in beer. It's in Corona. But I'm not one of these guys who's like a big beer enthusiast. I just don't drink wine ever. I can have a glass. It's not like I can't drink it, but it just never interested me. Sake. Dave DeBoer was mentioning sake. Sake's fantastic. Hot sake is terrific. It's delicious. But here's something that you might be interested in regarding the alcohol thing. I mean, I'll go out on an evening or go to dinner, go on a date or something, and I'll have a drink or two during the date, and that's fine. And I'll have a beer or two when I go out and watch football games. But it occurred to me, this is really quite unusual, I think. It occurred to me this last summer that I have bought alcohol for other people, and other people have bought alcohol for me. But I am quite sure that I've never bought alcohol for myself that I consumed at home. I don't think I've ever gone out and gotten a glass of a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer or scotch or anything that I brought home to drink. I don't think that's ever happened. So I have the same kind of drinking problem that the guy in Airplane has on a drinking problem. What is his name? My God, it's just slipped my mind. I don't know what's happening to my memory. It's right on the tip of my... Robert... He's actually a friend of mine, and I don't want to put him in Big Bat Problems. He's a terrific actor. The guy played the lead in Airplane movies. God, it's so close. I got him. I see his picture so well. And now I'm going to get 50 answers coming up in the comment box in just a second. But he's a great guy and actually a good friend of mine. I like him a lot. Yeah, Ted Stryker. Robert, Bob. Anyway, it'll come to me. It'll come to you. Yeah, that's the kind of drinking problem I have. The kind he had. Got a drinking problem. I'm still waiting for the name. It's going to drive me nuts until I get it. Robert Hayes, thank you very much. And Aesop's Retreat wins the Cadillac, and somebody else is going to get the steak knives, and everybody else gets fired. He's terrific. Bob Hayes is a terrific actor and a nice guy and a funny guy, and I think he'd be an excellent serious actor too. He's just so lovable. You just like the guy. He's considerably older than, those movies are like 20, 30 years old. Oh, by the way, margaritas. Yes, there's a margarita place in town here. It's absolutely fantastic. Don Cuco's makes the best margaritas I ever had. When I had my 52nd birthday party there, and I had 5, and they're like bowls. They're like just like a swimming pool, something like a hot tub. Is a lot of stuff. Robert Hayes. Yes, it was Hayes. Did I say something else? In any event, yes. So I like all the stuff. I'm just not a big drinker, and I get I get sauced pretty easily, and I'm a really terrific I'm a terrific drunk. You know, I'm friendly, and I get really happy, and you know, throwing cash around and telling everybody I'm just crazy about them and so on. So it's yeah, I'm a good guy to go out and have a party with, but I don't do it very often. Fun question though. Well, look at this now. It's Cheryl Toomey again. I just took them as we got them, folks. I just picked them up and did them. Let's see. What is your greatest fear? What on this earth scares the bejesus out of you? That's a terrific question. It's probably the question. I thought about it for just a minute. It's not even that long, a split second really, and I immediately came up with the answer because I identified what it was not too long ago. The thing that I really fear the most is I fear this millennial generation's ability to cope with the kind of problems that they're going to deal with. I've always been worried. I'd make a living worrying about the external threats to this country, internal threats. The debt is terrifying. Russia resurgent is scary. China's scary. Losing our edge technologically is scary. I don't think too much of global warming, but the debt bomb is scary. All of this stuff is actually serious, very serious problems. But I do not see any sign that these millennials as a generation are going to be able to handle any of it. Now, every time I say that, I got to clarify this. There's some terrific conservatives out there who are really young, including the people that brought me up to that high school, that Jewish high school. I mean, these kids went out and raised money to get me up there. And they started their little conservative group up in the school. It was called the Rebel Alliance. So they're out there. And needless to say, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, just about everybody in the military is the guys on the sub, and the guy, even those miscreants and malcontents, alcoholics, and perverts down at Eglin Air Force, Eglin Air Force Base, wherever CENTCOM is when I was down there. Even those guys there were pretty competent. These F-16 pilots who gave me my call sign. But as a rule, I'm very, very concerned about them. They can't deal with a different opinion on campus without trying to shut it down, having protests, needing counseling. I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos, who I think is terrific. I think he's just terrific. He goes and speaks on a campus. He's probably, I think he called his tour the Dangerous Faggot Tour. So here's a guy who's so incredibly kind of hip and basically harmed MacDill. Sorry about that. Foghorn. It was MacDill Air Force Base. I was so lit I couldn't tell you. I probably would have driven the electric bike all the way to Eglin, which is up in the Panhandle. MacDill. Sorry about that. But Milo is causing these people to have heart palpitations and therapy, and they need counseling for weeks after hearing somebody speak of something with differing opinions from theirs. Now, a lot of it is acting out, and a lot of it is the giant virtue signaling, show where you're just trying to show off about how sensitive you are. I understand that. But I don't know. We've had enormous problems in this country, and we've had generations that dealt with them. I don't know about these kids. There's something different. There is, needless to say, that every generation assumes that the next generation is just utterly worthless and weak and stupid and is going to cause the death of everybody. I was in a tech manual for aliens. It was like an aliens piece of fiction, but it was like the aliens handbook to the colonial Marines. Cutaway diagrams of the dropship and all the weapons and all that other stuff. It was beautifully written. It was really, really clever. Actually, really clever. And there was a term in that, and I never forgot. And he was basically saying, he was speaking as a sergeant in the Colonial Marines, 100 years from now, 200 years from now. And he was saying, that sergeants, going back to flinty Israelites, sergeants have been talking about how much better their generation was, not this, newfangled stuff with your trumpets to blow down a wall. If we wanted to, knock down a wall, we'd go pull it apart with our bare hands, not not use these newfangled trumpets and marching around the city 7 times of Jericho before we blow our horns and the walls come down. So there's that. But I genuinely think these kids are different. And the greatest generation was actually really mocked. I mean, you can almost make the case that the reason that we were attacked by Japan was they were so sure, coming out of the Roaring '20s, they were so sure that Americans were decadent, lazy cowards that they didn't bomb Pearl Harbor with the plan to have their entire culture wiped out and a couple of nuclear bombs dropped on them. That was not their objective when they launched that sneak attack. They attacked Pearl Harbor because they were pretty sure that that the Americans weren't going to fight for it, that we would actually literally just say, well played, and that we would retreat from the Pacific and then they'd be on their own. But they underestimated those guys, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is they thought they were weak and stupid and lazy, and it turned out they were the greatest generation. But I think there is something different about this generation, and I think it's the electronics. It's the electronics, and it's the first time that we've ever had an American cohort raised by socialists, and also not only just raised by socialists, but raised in such comfort that they've never known any kind of hardship. I mean, look, I've never been really hungry in my life. I've been cold a couple of times, but never really well, that's not true, actually. In college, I was 119 pounds. I was hungry for a year or two, like genuinely hungry, like starving hungry. Find money under the, drive-in window hungry. So actually, I have been, come to think of it. But these kids, generally speaking, haven't. And 24-hour entertainment, 24-hour access to information. They're never bored. They're never out of touch. They're never alone. They don't seem to talk to each other the way that my generation, everybody previous, in fact, Gen X and Gen Y, these millennials seem different from them. These devices, I think, are causing a tremendous amount of damage that they don't realize. And their interpersonal skills are terrible, and their ability to cope with crisis is terrible because they've never been allowed to cope with a crisis. They've been fed this, self-esteem movement where everybody wins and nobody loses, and everybody's a champion, and everybody's gold star goes on there. And there goes our operation manager, Carla, leaving after a long day at BillWhittle.com, sneaking out like she's probably got my checkbook with me, and here's the rest of the cash for the day. Yeah, they've just been, I don't know, I think they've been just really coddled, and I think that they were coddled because their parents, which really is my generation, the greatest generation came back, and I'm not going to go into all this, I've talked about this before, but the greatest generation came back and they saw some horrible things, and they saved the world, made the world safe for democracy, but as parents they had some flaws. I guess when you've watched enough of your friends turn into pink mist, you're probably going to spend the rest of your life sitting on a lazy boy and listening to Perry Como and Lawrence Welk, and you don't want any loud noises, and you don't need any more excitement. You've had plenty of excitement by the time you're 23 or 24. So I think they're a bit distant, and I think that my generation as parents overcompensated for that by not only being there for the kids, but by trying to be their kids' pal. And every time I see a kid acting up in a Walmart or on an airplane, every time I see a kid screaming at the top of his lungs for minutes at a time, just screaming, every single time that there is a male there, a father there, every single time, the first words out of their mouths are, "What's the matter, buddy?" Pal. And that's not what a dad is. So they're really worry me. If they can't handle, could have answered this in one sentence. If they can't handle Milo Yiannopoulos speaking in an auditorium, what are they going to do when kids their age who have been sawing the heads off of people since they were 6 come over here and decide to take this past the discussion stage? That's what it comes down to. They're just so soft. They don't. They don't. Now you could make look. If things really go south, if the other shoe drops and it really goes south, they'll toughen up real fast. They'll toughen up or die, and it'd be amazing what genuine hardship will do for people in the space of very short period of time. If you chucked them all out in the jungle and gave them a guy who knew what he was doing and said, you either do these things like go get your own water, kill that little rabbit over there, skin it and cook it, or you starve to death. So they toughen up, but I don't know. That's the actual answer, Cheryl. That's what really does scare me is the lack of mental toughness of this generation, which is accelerating. As they get more and more attention for this kind of acting out, it just accelerates. And by the way, when everybody gets a gold star, you're breeding socialists, right? If no one's better, if no one wins, nobody loses, everybody gets the participant award, you're breeding socialists. You're breeding people who not only are going to get the same income as all the rest of them, but actually deserve it because no one's being better, no one's excelling, no one's taking risks, no one's working harder. Everybody's just coming in, they're getting their gold star, and they're checking their Facebook status and tweeting a couple things and putting up the picture of their lunch on Instagram, and they don't seem to be terribly ambitious to me at all as a cohort. With that said, the kid that brought me up there went out and raised the money for me. They're all gonna be working for him. All right, let's see. We got a couple more here. Karen Belikoff asks, I have this original question for you. When are we going to make Stratacon a thing, and where will we hold it? I believe my friend Dave Olson theoretically nominated Vegas at the Stratosphere Hotel. That's a brilliant idea, the Stratosphere Hotel in Vegas. Vegas is a pretty good idea anyway because it's easy to get to in terms of airfares. There's a lot of airlines. I don't know if they get exactly subsidies, but there's a lot of traffic in and out of Vegas, and it's not quite as far as LA from the center of the country or the East Coast. And the answer to when it's going to be is up in the air. And I know we talk about build time and how it's just somewhat faster than geological time, but not much. And I don't know. I know that right now this little shop of ours, see the Dave Bowman behind me there? We're going to get the space behind that. We're going to set up a permanent green screen up there. We're going to be able to just turn on the lights, shoot some video, turn them out, get them out here, edit them, and up. We got to be able to move with the speed of a place like PJTV that had that kind of staff. 6 producers and a sound guy, a couple of camera guys, director, producers. Yeah, it's a real deal. So we're going to have to do that on a much smaller budget, but I'm convinced we can do that. But it is going to make it more difficult to find the time to do this, unless, as I said again and again today, unless the PJTV members come over in force. If they come over in force, we'll actually have the budget. If we have the budget, we'll do it this year. We'll do it this summer. So I guess that's really your answer. Karen, I think Vegas is a great idea, and the Stratosphere Hotel there is a great idea too, except that it's a little old and it's a long way away from the rest of the stuff. But to be honest with you, I think I'd make up for it just for the coolness of it, because it is very cool. It's just on the other end of the strip. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely do that. And one other thing to think about too is I would love to do a cruise. I've never been on a cruise. And I think you can actually set these things up relatively easily because I've seen a number of people who are not like super big wigs doing there's like the NRO cruise, and then there's Radio Classics cruise. I listen to them on Sirius XM, all the old radio shows, and they do an annual cruise. So I'm sure that that it's not too hard to set that up, and a cruise would be really fun. Be especially fun if the ship went down, because then we could really test out a lot of these theories about steely-eyed missile men and women and all the rest of it. So cruise might be kind of a cool idea too. But yes, I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it this year. If we have, if the PJTV members come over, we will suddenly have the money to do, not only to continue doing Trifecta, but we'll have the money to, be a lot more on time with our members only stuff. Right now I have to edit all of that. I have to shoot it, edit it, I have to write it, I have to, I do 7 or 8 videos a week. And when we do the Klavan show, there's been days at PJTV when we shoot all 8 Klavan segments plus 5 trifectas, that's 13, plus a hot seat is 14, and an afterburner is 15. I mean, that's 15 segments in one day. That's a lot of work. And so we need to ramp this thing up. So we plan to, and we hope to, and we'll find out about that soon enough. But we'd love to do it. It's a great idea. It's always been a great idea, and I'd love to meet more of you in person. We had some people here for the 100th episode, and that was really fun. But I would really like to make it a thing, because it'd just be really a blast. Susan Speakman again. It looks like Senator Cruz has his ground game well organized. Is there anything we here in the grassroots can do besides donate to ensure that he gets to 1237 before Mr. Trump does? They've talked to me a few times about doing messaging, and then I send out I follow up with the email, and I just don't hear back from them. Yes, Ted is obviously a real conservative, and it's just a measure of how far out the Trump campaign is that Ted looks like the insider. I mean, like the establishment guy. He's the real deal. He went there, and he pretty much alone among the senators that we elected that in that cohort went out there and actually did what he said he was going to do, try and stop Obama. But that campaign needs some work, and he needs some messaging help. And the problem is that the longer you wait, the more explosive that has to be, because people's attitudes get hardened. And if you're going to change their minds, you've got to. The longer you wait, the more aggressive you have to be. If it had been done really early, I don't think even some of these problems would have developed. Trump is painting him as a liar, and somebody's trying to steal delegates, and I know a lot of people think that he's, like this religious fanatic who wants to bring a theocracy to America, and just the kind of campaign help I was giving him when I saw him last, or saw his people last, is like, no, Ted needs to do a TV commercial where he says, no, look, if I wanted a theocracy, I'd be running for reverend. I love the Constitution. I memorized it when I was 12, and I'm the person running who's trying to put the checks and balances back into the Constitution to make a theocracy impossible. I'm the one that's trying to not only defend the Constitution but rebuild it back to its initial condition, specifically so that we cannot have a theocracy. Those kind of messages are really effective, and I had a bunch of messages about the Donald and I'm not going to get into them now, but I will just say this. I think the problem, what I told Ted and the rest of his campaign was, they've been attacking Trump where he's weak. They've been attacking him on how he's not a real conservative. They've been attacking him on how he gave money to Hillary. They've been attacking him on, his offensive tweets and all the rest of this stuff. And I said to these guys, nobody cares. I thought they were going to care. I spent 6 months trying to explain, that these are things that we've fought for the last 8 years against, and now a lot of it's coming through Donald Trump, and can't you really see that there's not a lot of track record of trustworthy consistency with this guy, to say the least. And so they attack him where he's weak. They seem to think that he's not a conservative, we'll attack him there. He's giving money to Democrats, we'll attack him there. He's kind of a jackass, we'll attack him there. But that doesn't matter, because people don't care. Donald Trump is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He's you choose the shape of your destroyer. The reason people back Trump, and the reason when I am inclined to support Trump, it's for this reason. The times I find myself most in favor of Trump is when I hear people I saw Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick do a producers thing, an anti-Trump producers thing, and I just thought, screw you guys. Who do you think you are? Whenever I hear late night hosts, like Jimmy Fallon or somebody, or Stephen Colbert, knocking him down, I say, screw you. And I think he's the middle finger to Washington and the establishment. So he is got to be beaten where he's strong. And this was the point I was trying to make to them. You've got to defeat Trump where he's strong, not where he's weak. People, what do people like about Trump? He's a straight talker. He's a competent businessman, and he's not beholden to anybody because he's paying his own campaign way. And if you don't destroy those three pillars, then he's going to win. You have to. What I basically said was, you have to make Trump. Well, I'll give away the whole farm here, but why not? I mean, I already told them about it. Whether they use it or not, we'll see. If I was running against Donald Trump, if I was running a campaign against Donald Trump right now, and I'm not one of these people that's, losing their mind over this. I think this division in the Republican Party is just horrible and nasty. But if I was running against Trump, what I would do is, I think the only way you can beat him is you have to make Trump beat himself, not through gaffes or mistakes or misstatements or anything like that. The people that support him for those reasons. He's a straight talker. He's a great businessman, and he's not beholden to anybody. If you want to beat him, what I would do, and basically what I suggested is, I'd say, look, you have to put Trump in a position where Trump fires himself. And Ted said, well, he's not going to debate me anymore, Bill. He's afraid to debate me, and it makes sense that he wouldn't debate him. He's got nowhere to go but down. So I said, well, then debate the hairpiece. Put a blonde comb over wig on a foam head, and put a sign around the neck that says "Believe me" on one side and "Trust me" on the other, and then ask the questions to the hairpiece, and then when you don't get an answer, take "Believe me," turn it around, and then make it say "Trust me." And when you don't get an answer, take "Trust me," turn it around to "Believe me." But the short form is basically this. If it were me, I would say, Mr. Trump, you say, believe me a lot, trust me a lot. When people ask you for specifics about things like how we're going to build the wall, how we're going to strengthen defense, what the kind of health care is going to be, when we ask for specifics, what we get is believe me and trust me. So my question to you is simply this. If I was coming into a job opportunity, if I was an apprentice, let's say, and you were sitting behind your desk, and I said to you, I graduated from Princeton. I had a master's at Yale. I graduated from Harvard Law, and I've been the CEO of an extremely successful electronics company in Silicon Valley, and I'd like this job. And then you, Mr. Trump, said to me, well, show me your resume. And I'd say, oh, no, I did it. Trust me. Believe me. I did those things. What two words would you use to me if I had the audacity to do that to you while you're sitting behind your desk while I was applying for a job? If I claimed that I was all these things and I couldn't back it up with anything, what would you say to me? Because I kind of think you would say, you're fired. And that's where you have to beat him. You have to beat him in his strengths, not his weaknesses. And the flip side of this is you have to take, instead of advertising Ted's strengths, you have to advertise Ted's weaknesses. And this is something that nobody seems to understand except for me. You have to own them. If it's a weapon that's being used against him, you have to own it. And if it's a weapon that's just like people think he looks funny, okay, own it. Own it. Do a video about it. Get a bunch of people saying, I just don't like his face. He looks odd. He looks funny. He's weird. I don't know. Something odd about him. I just don't like the way he looks. Put a bunch of those together. Have people think it's a Trump ad, and then have Ted show up and say, this is the face I've got, and my wife loves me, and I've never really worried about it, except that it's heartbreaking to me to think that people don't believe I'm serious because of the way my face is constructed. I can't do much about that. I've always had this kind of kind of deputy dog look, and I just think that sometimes people don't listen to what I'm trying to say about how great this country is and what we can do to protect it because of this look I was born with. And I think if you did that, if you had the guts to do that, I think that next time anybody who'd seen that ad said, oh, he looks funny, they would say, well, that's kind of rude of me or cruel of me. And I don't think you're ever going to make Ted sexy, but you can make him empathetic, and you can make people go, oh, well, that's actually, number one, it's a good point. Number two, it's kind of sad, and I've been kind of a jerk about it. Number three, it takes an incredible amount of confidence to do something like that. You can never imagine Donald Trump making fun of his own spray on tan or anything. I think it's a bold thing to do, but you have to, if you're going to attack Trump where he's strong, and you've got to advertise Ted's weaknesses, and you have to own them. You have to own them. People think you want to bring a theocracy. No, I'm running for president to protect the Constitution so that a theocracy is impossible. I'm trying to prevent a theocracy, not create one. And that's what my record is a record of defending the Constitution, which prevents this theocracy that Barack Obama has eroded so much over the last 8 years. I want those protections back. Own it. Go right at it. Own it. And they don't do it. And so these negatives just keep scoring. Once you own it, then it's powerless against you. You just take away their weapons. And I do it. And of course, look, I didn't come up with this. The classic I came up with for this campaign, but the classic textbook example of this is Ronald Reagan and his age. When he ran a second campaign in 1984 against Walter Mondale, he was really, I think, the oldest president, or second oldest. He was in his late 70s, I want to say, maybe mid 70s. But he'd been not good, and a lot of people had said, we really think he's kind of losing his edge. We're really concerned that he's actually starting to get a little senile. Then the first debate with Mondale, he'd been up all night trying to cram for this thing, and he was awful. He was just terrible. He couldn't remember anything. He wasn't himself. He was just a confused, what they tried to make him into. They were trying to make him into this confused kind of old man, just kind of stumbling around, and it was a terrible performance for him. But old age and senility was the issue that they were using against Reagan. Those were the weapons that were being used against Reagan. And the Reagan campaign, or Reagan himself, was smart enough to understand that instead of running away from this, look how young and healthy I am. Let's just own it. Let's make it our joke. And if we make it our joke, then it won't have any power over us anymore. So he gets into that second debate, and he says, listen, before this goes any further, I know there's been a lot of talk about age in this campaign and the impact of age in this campaign. But I would like to say, as a candidate, that I think it's disgraceful that my opponent's youth and inexperience is being used against him. And everybody laughed, and Mondale burst out laughing. And that was the end of it. It was never brought up again. It was just absolutely perfectly executed. It was self-deprecating, but it wasn't self-flagellating. And it was clever and ironic and funny. And that was it. That was it. It was perfect. And why we don't learn from this, I don't know. But we don't. Let's see, we got 2 to go. Ashley Mahaffey asks, or Mahaffey. Bill, it's been well over a month now. It's time you weigh in on the Ghostbusters debacle and the underlying clash of ideologies. Yeah. I saw the new Ghostbusters. I knew they were making a new Ghostbusters. I didn't know it was all women until like a few days before I saw the trailer. And then I saw the trailer, and I don't think anybody in the country ever thought anything other than this is catastrophic. And it's going to be a catastrophe. It's going to be one of the biggest bombs of all time, and it's a slam dunk. How do you screw up Ghostbusters after what, 84, 94, after 30 years? I mean, it's like Star Wars. How do you screw that up? Well, you can, and I think the way you screw it up is by being politically correct. Is by showing how advanced we are, and virtue signaling on the part of the studio, and it's virtue signaling on the part of the director, and it's virtue signaling on the part of everybody else there. We've come so far that we're going to make this about women, and it'll be just as funny as the original, only it won't. And the reason it won't is because the original Ghostbusters was not slapstick, but it was physical and it was cynical. And when these women try to pull this off, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I could believe that a guy who looks like not Eugene Levy. I'm really worried about losing my memory, honestly. He just died a year or 2 ago. Oh, I need a little dictionary here. My God. Second City guy was so. Oh. You'll get it. I could believe that guy was a scientist who could build, Harold Ramis, thank you so much, Dave. Harold I believe that Harold Ramis could build these things, these containment units, and these beam weapons. But I don't believe that the woman that they cast for this would do it, and I don't believe any of them. And I don't see. This is the thing. It's not just Ghostbusters. I saw the trailer for Rogue One, and it looked like it was going to be really cool. And I see the thing, and it's like, oh, we're going to start a whole parallel Star Wars line and get a Star Wars movie a year. Awesome. And the first thing you see is you see the character, and you reveal, and it's like it's this young woman, warrior, mage, kind of ninja, pilot, assassin kind of thing. And I just said, yeah, I'm out. I'm done. I don't believe it. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but I'm saying they're outnumbered by men by 10,000 to 1. And I don't believe it. And it's not just that I don't believe the casting. I think it is, in fact, a really poor decision to take what are essentially movies that are appeal to men or boys and cast them in the name of social justice with lead actors. I bought Finn, and I'm really, really, really worried about what's wrong with me today here. Rey in the new Star Wars movie. I bought her. I didn't like the fact that she was super person who has nowhere to go. She's never flown a ship before, and she's already better pilot than Han Solo, and she's never used a lightsaber before, and she's already better than a guy who's been practicing his whole life, and she's absolutely all powerful all the time. That was boring and kind of stupid, but she was a neat character, and I didn't have any particular problem with her. But when they bring out another parallel universe in Star Wars, and this one is this kind of teenage chick. It's exactly right. It's the Hunger Games. It's the exact same story. It's the Hunger Games, and it's the what's that other series that they're doing where they have this. They've got like 4 or 5 of them now. I'm really out of it tonight for some reason. But I don't buy it, and I don't buy it, and I think that, I don't know, maybe these kids buy it, but no, lightsabers and AT-ATs and Divergent, thank you, and spaceships and all this stuff. This is primarily boy stuff. I'm not saying exclusively boy stuff, but it's primarily boy stuff. And when you take something that's primarily for boys and force women into it to prove a point, you're simply killing it. And they killed Ghostbusters. Women cannot deliver that kind of humor. There's just something about it. The thing about Ghostbusters that I think made it work was that it was essentially Ghostbusters. I never really thought about this before, but Ghostbusters is basically Animal House with nuclear powered cannons, right? I mean, that's really it. They're four boys, grown boys, who are kind of lazy and kind of don't give a damn about anything, and they've got that sassiness, and they're just frat boys. They're 4 frat boys with laser devices and neutron traps for things. It's Animal House, meets Halloween, or you can't. That's the reputation that men have, is that they're kind of messy and they're kind of smelly. I was talking about this earlier, and they're sassy, and they don't really give a damn about anything. They don't care. The places, Ghostbusters headquarters is not like the inside of the wildfire complex in the Andromeda Strain. It's just it's a frat room, and they're friends, and there's that kind of combat bonding. And when you force women into this, it just doesn't work. That's not to say that women can't be funny. Women can be very funny. I think one of my all-time favorite comedians is Maria Bamford, who is an enormous, gigantic liberal. But Maria Bamford is the funniest woman, and maybe one of the 2 or 3 funniest people I've ever heard. I just adore her. So I'm not saying that she can't do it. I'm not saying that science fiction is just for guys, Cheryl. I'm not saying that at all. I am saying, though, that if you're going to do a comedy that is essentially a buddy story, if you're going to do a comedy that is about that kind of don't give a damn sort of, pea in the hedges kind of thing, then you just can't do it. And it's going to be a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe. I bought, somebody mentioned Battlestar Galactica. when I saw Battlestar Galactica, and I thought, okay, they're going to turn Starbuck, they're going to turn the head fighter pilot into a woman. I thought, I don't know, it's not going to work. It did work. She was great. She was great. There was apparently the only episode I just couldn't bear to watch was she gets into a boxing ring and has a fist fight with Apollo, and I just couldn't buy that. But no, she was good, and so it's not a question of like, geez, no girls allowed. I just don't think that I don't think that they can pull off this kind of humor. I mean, I could see the lines, these kind of throwaway attitudes for the lines, but I couldn't. I don't know. It was a catastrophe. You saw it. Everybody who's seen the new Ghostbuster trailer just said this is awful. It's not even close to being funny or interesting. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And that's ultimately it, right? I mean, that's ultimately what a movie's going to have to live or die on. Do you believe it? I mean, do you believe that a kid on a planet where they're harnessing, moisture out of the atmosphere wants to go off to college someplace, and then these people from the sky come and kill his family, and he picks up his dad's lightsaber and travels across the universe trying to, restore balance to the Force? Do you believe it or not? I did believe it. I did believe it. Absolutely did. I believed in the alien universe. I believed in Star Trek. I believe it could happen. But when you start out with this kind of come on, and there's a lot of movies that are like that. Just come on. Avatar, for example, it's like we're going to fly, what is it, 6 trillion miles from Earth to Alpha Centauri? 6 trillion miles from here to there, and then you find out that these, the sacred tree of the Navi is under the biggest unobtainium, the biggest unobtainium reservoir for 120 clicks. Just think about that. We come 6 trillion miles to this planet, and we're going to destroy these people and destroy their homes, and we're going to make all-time enemies out of them because we can't go another 120 kilometers, which is what, 70 miles, 80 miles, something like that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's like, come on. The military guy was such a cartoon, and the business guy was such a cartoon. It was like, it's just bad writing, just bad. And there's a lot of bad writing in Star Wars. We talked about that before. You've got this Phasma character who's supposed to be the super stormtrooper. Again, it's a woman. Okay, all right. She's a badass warrior, fine. And she's got her gun, great. But what do they do with this character? Nothing. As a matter of fact, it turns into an absolute coward. They put a gun to her head and says, lower the shield so we can destroy this ultimate weapon of yours, including you and everybody else on it. And she says, well, one of these days I'll get even with you. And then she lowers the shields. That should either be a spear carrier who's scared, or she should say no and either take the blaster shot to the head or call the bluff and show some courage and lock her away and bring her back later. Lazy. And Leia's performance when she found out that Han had been killed was horribly lazy. Losing the most popular character, arguably the most popular character in pop culture. You could make a case that Han Solo is the most popular character ever. You could make a good case for that. And to kill him for so little gain and with so little emotional resonance, to have it be such a meh, right? M-E-H, meh. He was killed by his emo son, who's in pursuit of a new kind of moisturizer. He just stabbed his dad in the back and he falls into a pit. Meh. I said this before on the Star Wars review. If Han Solo's going to die, Han Solo has to die so that the ultimate super Death Star is destroyed. He's got to die to save the universe. He's got to die for something worthwhile. It's a throwaway. It was terrible. Same thing with Kirk, by the way. It was a pathetic death for James T. Kirk, fall off a catwalk and into a ravine on some unknown planet out in the middle of nowhere, trying to stop a guy from launching an Estes rocket into the sun. Just no. We know these people too well. If you're going to give us that kind of meaningless death, then have him hit by a bus. That at least is a statement. He's just walking along. He survived all these incredible hardships and people trying to kill him for 50 years, and all of a sudden he just stepped off the curb the wrong way, got hit by a bus, and he's dead. Okay, that's a point. But these things are just they're just so wasted, the way they waste these moments. And as I said before, Leia's reaction is unbelievably awful. She finds out that the love of her life is killed, and her reaction is exactly the same as it would be if she'd opened an envelope and found out that her monthly cable bill was much higher than she'd expected. That's it. She should have broken down into tears, and the rock hard general should have broken down into tears. The only thing in life she ever loved ever is gone. And she's like, oh, please. Terrible. So yes, I think the Ghostbusters movie is going to be a catastrophe, and I think they know it's going to be a catastrophe. And we all know why it's going to be a catastrophe. I had a feeling about this on the Wild Wild West. When I loved that TV show. I thought the TV show was terrific. Absolutely great. I loved it. And so they remake it, and now they're going to have Will Smith playing James West. And I'm sorry. If you're going to tell me that the Secret Service agent who's protecting General Grant in 1867 or 68 is a black guy, a smart-talking black guy on the Western frontier, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And not only do I not believe it, I believe that you're making me believe it, that you're forcing it down my throats in order to show how incredibly advanced you are. It was a catastrophe. That movie is one of the biggest bombs in history. And it was terrible. It was terrible. And you can't just... You can. I mean, they did, right? They did it with Ghostbusters. They did it with Star Wars. They did it with the Wild Wild West. But they're taking things that people love, and they're changing the essence of them. The Star Wars reboot, I thought I was going to hate, because in the first movie, the trailer for the first Star Wars reboot movie, you see Kirk as a young guy, and all he is a fighter, and he's riding his motorcycle, and as a little boy, he's running away from the cops, and he's just a rebel. He's just a rebel, and he's a rebel all the time, and he's such a rebel. And I thought, that's not Kirk at all. Kirk was described as a stack of books with legs at Starfleet Academy. But at least in the reboot, they showed that the reason this Kirk is different was because his dad wasn't around. He didn't have a dad. His dad died in this alternate universe, and that's why this Kirk is a rebel. His essence was still there, but it was much, much rougher and unfocused than the original Shatner Kirk was. And I love that movie because when... I didn't super love it, but the two Star Trek reboots I liked a lot because they gave me what I was looking for. I wanted James Kirk to be a certain way. I wanted Spock to be a certain way. I wanted Scotty to do certain things. I wanted McCoy to be acerbic and cynical. And I got him. And so I thought, great, super, this was fun. Now they're going to turn this next the next Star Trek movie, the third Star Trek movie, is being handled by the director of one of the Fast and Furious movies, and they're going to destroy the Enterprise again. If you destroy the Enterprise every movie or every other movie, it kind of loses its impact. When it got destroyed in The Search for Spock, it's like, oh my God. But, Enterprise has been destroyed a couple times since then. The Enterprise D was destroyed, and we're going to destroy the Enterprise in the next Star Trek movie, and they're going to be down on a planet, and guess exactly what it looks like. It looks like Fast and the Furious. You got guys doing jumps on motorcycles and driving cars around, and it's not Star Trek, and I think it's going to tank. I thought the Into Darkness was great. I really loved it. I thought Foghorn said he thought Benedict Cumberbatch was terrific as Khan. He was terrific. I thought it was a good movie, really solid, fun movie that was actually Star Trek. And the inversion of the plot from the original universe, the whole idea that there's a different universe, that the world has split off, that you knew one pathway, now we're living in an alternate universe. Anyway, it just, it worked. And when you hear Spock screaming Khan, and Kirk dying in the radiation thing, I thought that's actually beautiful. It's nicely done. Nicely done. But like Ghostbusters, if you wanna make a point and destroy everything that we loved in order to make your political point, then expect to do badly in the box office, and thanks for ruining my childhood. And the original three Star Wars prequels are appalling. They ruined that show, and J.J. Abrams brought it back. The last Crystal Skull, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, it's like not only was it bad, it Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull actually hurt the first 3 movies. It made them worse in a weird sort of way. I can't explain it, but yeah. This is what happens when you're being socially engineered by people who know more than you about what you want. And last for the night, it's Marisol Balderas, who says, I couldn't get my question answered last time, but I understand you have many, so I will try again. The public school system is horrible. Children are taught not to question the government. They occasionally have their parents' property taken away and then ask money in return to give you back your own property. Global warming and evolution are taught as fact, and feminization of boys is common. What can be done about it? Thanks. I might as well just go there, whatever. There's only one part of this that I find, well, like I say, I'll just go there. Look, first of all, your point is absolutely right, Marisol. They are making socialists. We talked earlier about this generation and how weak they are. But the thing that they're really doing is they're making socialists. No wonder they love Bernie. They've never been allowed to excel. They've never been able to come in first. They've never won things or lost things. They want everybody's pretty much the same, and everybody should get the same share, and everybody gets the same number of gold stars, and they get the same salary, and they get the same everything, and they're making them into socialists. They're turning everything that we used to believe on its head and making that part of the thing, and you're getting political indoctrination and radicalization in math classes and science classes and all the rest. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and open up this can of worms because I had this argument at the Horowitz retreat. I had this exact argument at the Horowitz retreat this last weekend down in Palos Verdes. So let me tell you how it came about last time. When I was up at the Jewish high school, I told them in advance, I talked to the rabbi, very progressive school, it's a Jewish high school in Palo Alto. It's about as progressive as you get. And so I said, look, rather than me doing a 45-minute speech, where they're just going to sit there and snort and roll their eyes at me the whole time, why don't I simply give them 5 minutes of the things that I believe, the core beliefs I believe in. I believe in free enterprise, I believe in business over government, I believe in gun rights, I believe in lots of energy, I believe in strong defense, I believe in capitalism over socialism. Just you give it to them in 5 minutes and then let them ask questions. And then during the day I can take questions and that way they'll be attacking me rather than me, spewing at them, and their defenses should come down and so on. Now, one byproduct of this that I had not counted on until I realized it on the way home after this event was, what I hadn't realized was, since they knew in advance that I was not really going to say much other than just an initial statement of principles and that the whole event was about taking questions, on the drive home I realized that I could tell an awful lot about what they thought about conservatives by the kind of questions that they asked. They asked questions about, are there reasonable restrictions on gun control that you believe in? And I said, only that felons are not allowed to own guns. You prove it's not a felon. I think that's the only restriction, but I think that's a reasonable restriction. They asked about gay marriage, and I said, look, there's nothing about gay marriage in the Constitution. There's nothing about straight marriage in the Constitution. It's got nothing to do with the federal government. I don't think it has anything to do with the government at all. As a matter of fact, kids, the reason that you have to get a state marriage license and that the state can say you two can get married but you two can't is because the Democrats, after the Civil War, made it law that you had to have the approval of the government to get married in the form of a license because they were trying to stop black people from marrying white people. Just throw a little hand grenade out there just to get their attention, which is true. So I said, it's not the government's business. It's got nothing to do with them. But if you agree that the government doesn't have the right to say you can't marry these people, you also have to agree that the government doesn't have the right to say that you have to marry them. That if you find a congregation that wants to marry 2 men together or 2 women, fine, that's great. And as long as they're happy, I don't care. It's no skin off of my nose. None of my business, none of the government's business. But if you're saying that the government now has to go into congregations that think this is a sin and tell them that they must marry gay people if they want to, now you're talking about something that's actually in the Constitution, which is the First Amendment. So they asked me all these questions about the poor. They asked me questions, and they were setting me up. So here's where I'm going to go wading into the waters here. They said, what do you think about as a conservative and Republican, what do you think about science? And I said, I'm in favor of it. And I got a little laugh, and then I said, but what you're really asking me is, how do I feel about science inserting itself into politics? And they said, yeah, that's exactly it. So I'll tell you what I told them. I said, look, I've been a scientist. I've worked in labs. I've worked in a geochronology lab for 3 or 4 years. I worked as an astronomy assistant. I taught astronomy at the Miami Planetarium for years. I'm not a scientist, but I play one on TV. I understand how it works. I said there are some areas of science that I think are rock solid and others that aren't. I think evolution is rock solid. I don't think there's any question about it. And then I started telling them why I don't think that global warming is rock solid. I think global warming is very, very compromised in a way that evolution isn't. Evolution has astonishing, it's absolutely amazing degrees of actual evidence. I don't think, for me, there's no question about it, none. And I got into this discussion. I said this at the event, and then afterwards people came up and said, did you read this book? Did you read that book about, intelligent design? I said, yeah, well, yes, I've either read them or I know the argument. And I was talking with these guys, and one guy said, well, if evolution is true, how come a cat has never turned into a dog? And I said, the fact that you can ask me that question means that you do not understand the theory. It's like me telling you that the Yankees are the greatest baseball team ever because they've scored more touchdowns than any other baseball team. You have just revealed to me, by making that statement, that you don't understand it. Well, what are you saying, that if you took all these pieces of a watch and threw them on the floor, it would just assemble into a watch out of chance? I say, no, I'm not saying that at all. And that's not what evolution says either. Evolution says that that it is a ratchet, that things that are successful are kept and things that aren't successful are rejected. And I think that this is just the entire science of biology is built on this theory, and the genetics that came after the theory match the theory, and everything is in line there. And they would say, well, what about transitional? What about there are no transitional species, no transitional fossils. I said, well, of course there are transitional fossils. Archaeopteryx is a perfect transitional fossil. It's halfway between a dinosaur and a bird. It has feathers, and it's got a bird-like stance, but it's primarily reptilian. It has reptilian teeth. It's a perfect example. These fish with the fins down on the bottom and proto-lungs, and all of the different hominid ancestors, and Australopithecus and Homo erectus and all the rest of these guys, they're all transitional forms. Of course they're transitional forms. And, this guy said, well, here's this problem. Now, look, that doesn't mean that I think the universe is necessary mechanistic. I've come to think that that there may be something to the fact that the universe was created entire, has always been there, will always be there, and is based on information. It's based on information. So I'm open to that. But if that's true, then this is the mechanism that's been chosen. It's the mechanism, and it's clear. Now, somebody said that a creature is a billion times more complex than a watch. True, but you've had it a billion times longer to build it too, right? This is the thing. It's like, I heard a person arguing against evolution 25, 30 years ago. And they said that it's like expecting that that the Concorde could just come out of nowhere, the supersonic jetliner. And then he talked about all the navigation systems that would have to be in place and all the complexity that would have to be in place simultaneously to make the Concorde. And he was saying, so it can't happen. You can't have a bird because, like the Concorde has to have a radio system, has to have jet engines, has to have a fuel system, has to have navigation systems, has to have pressurization. And like that, a bird has to have this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. It just can't possibly assemble itself out of nowhere. And my response to that was, true, but the first airplane was not the Concorde. The first airplane didn't have a electrical system. It didn't have a navigation system. It wasn't supersonic. It didn't have retractable landing gear. It didn't have any of those things. Those things were added incrementally over time and tested, and what worked, and what didn't. And he just disproved his own argument and proved mine, I think. If you're going to contend that the world is 6,000 years old, then that's your business, and I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm not going to tell you Why I think you're wrong, it's your business. Like I said, it's not up to me. But, and this is not just political. If I don't make arguments that are just political. I make my politics about reality. I don't try to bring reality into my politics. If it turns out that by denying evolution and denying global warming in the same sentence, that to me is just nuts. There is no possible comparison of these two things. It's not like there's a computer model and that all of this theory of evolution was predicated on a computer model that would predict the results of evolution over time. If it turned out that that was the case, then you would just laugh it out of court. And you can't realistically weigh the evidence and put these two things together. So, look, you're welcome to disagree with me. You're welcome to completely disagree. You're welcome to get mad like these people at the event did. You can storm out and never see me again. That's fine. It's nice. I don't want to say I don't care, but I'm not going to change my mind over it. But there is no question that the evidence for this, in terms of tracking the genes back, in terms of the fossil record, in terms of the dating of the sediments, in terms of all of this stuff, it's really, really consistent and solid. And you have to ask yourself, if it is in fact the result of a creator, why would he put so many of these false clues into the world that he built and make them all so consistently interlocking? You know, I mean, radiocarbon is working on the same scales. Like plate tectonics are involved when you get into the fossils, and you find all of these things are consistent. And to say evolution is predicated on the philosophy of atheism, Dr. Think is just not true. It's not a religion. Evolution is not a philosophy. It's a scientific theory. Now, there are in science different tiers of truth. There are different tiers of truth. On the top, you have laws. Laws are irrefutable. A law may be enlarged upon, but a law cannot be contradicted because it's not a law then. So in other words, the gravitational rate of acceleration is constant in a 1G field. No matter where you measure it, anywhere on the Earth in 1G field, it's going to be 32 feet per second per second. That's a law. It's the same everywhere. Laws of gravitation are laws. The laws of thermodynamics are laws. The arrow of time is a law. You cannot contradict the second law of thermodynamics. You can't. Over time, things run down. And so these things are known for certainty. What you can do is you can develop theories that include what used to be a law into a larger theory that explains more. And a great example of this kind of thing is relativity and Newtonian physics. So in Newtonian physics, you have Newton who has the laws of gravitation, first, second, third laws of motion, and dealing with relatively large objects like planets over relatively long time, like centuries or millennia, but not too long a time, like, billions of years, works perfectly well. But once you start getting onto the margins of things that move quickly or over very, very long periods of time, then you start seeing errors appearing into Newtonian physics. And Einstein's theory of relativity explains the same thing that Newton's does, but also is wider. So relativity did not negate Newtonian physics. It enlarged upon Newtonian physics and basically said that Newtonian physics is a pretty simple way of looking at a fairly narrow slice of the universe in terms of relatively big objects moving relatively slowly. It works perfectly, but it's not the entire answer, and that's why you're starting to see some effects on the margins, because relativity is starting to act outside of the parameters of Newtonian physics. Now, a different thing than this would be the idea of the Big Bang theory versus the steady state theory. You look out into the universe in the 1910 or 20 or somewhere around there, early 1900s, and you measure redshift, which is a law. Doppler shift is a law. That's just the same, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's what it is. And so you look out into the universe with these sophisticated telescopes, and you begin to do this you begin to measure the spectrums of these things. And you find out that the further something away is, the more it's redshifting, the faster it's moving away from you. Now, That's evidence. That's indisputable evidence. That's consistent, indisputable evidence. Something is getting bigger. The universe is getting bigger. That's a law. But whether the universe was created from a big bang, which was an initial explosion, or whether it was a steady state where, hard to believe now, but when I grew up, when I was born, this was the dominant theory, was that the universe is simply assembling itself in the middle and is just flowing outwards like a stream. That's not a law. That's a theory. And when the Big Bang, evidence for Big Bang became more and more and more prevalent, the evidence against the steady state theory became equally in evidence, and therefore it negated it. So the steady state theory and the Big Bang theory are not laws, but the Big Bang theory is a theory, yes, but it is a theory with a great deal of evidence behind it. And then below a well-evidenced theory are badly evidenced theories. And evolution is a superbly evidenced theory. It is a theory, but it is superbly evidenced. The data there and it's astonishing. I mean, it's really, to me, there's no question about it. Global warming is nothing like that. There's nothing like that. And when people try to catch me on evolution, when they try to say, well, what about this, what about that, they ask questions that in their asking tell me they don't understand the theory. How did man evolve from monkeys? Well, they didn't evolve from monkeys. They evolved from a common ancestor. Man and monkeys both did. How come there's not more of the transitional records? How come everything's stable and then it changes? It's like, well, you have a mutation, and one mutation comes along, and it's either successful or it's not. If it's not successful, it'll be selected out. If it is, it might be passed on. If it's noticeably successful, then it will be passed on, and the less successful alternative will slowly breed out because it's not going to be able to eat as much. They're not going to pass down as many kids. So there's this punctuated equilibrium. You've got a stable organism, and then the environment changes, and then it either changes to the new environment, becomes something slightly different quickly over geological time, or it dies out. And I just don't see any question about it. And the reason I bring all this up is, and the reason I waded into this, even though I know some people don't agree with this, is this. They're not the same. I cannot reasonably attack global warming and say that evolution is mystery, is false too. That to me is the reasonable position. The evidence for evolution is overwhelming. The evidence for global warming is poor. So what do you say? I say you can't attack global warming. You can do whatever you want to. I can't attack global warming and deny evolution. I can't attack global warming and deny the second law of thermodynamics. I can't deny all science equally. I can only deny bad science. I can only point out bad science. So there you go. There you go. If you want to make the case that DNA is so incredibly unlikely that it had to be designed by somebody else, go ahead and make that case if you want to. That's fine. But you can't deny that the DNA has changed, and that this self-replicating molecule has allowed complexity of a level that is absolutely astonishing, but nevertheless is true. Natural selection, it just makes so much sense to me. And the idea of change through mutation, the whole theory is just, it's logically sound and consistent. And again, I'm not going to beat this to death because, there's no sense beating a dead Eohippus. But the evidence is I think overwhelming and conclusive. And so I put that in the level of not a law, but a very well supported theory. And, there you go. I think they were expecting me to say I don't believe in evolution and I don't believe in any of this stuff, and that's not what they got from me. I don't think they got what they thought they were going to get from me. They didn't get the conservative caricature that they thought I was going to be, and that actually surprised them, and I think also pleased them quite a bit. They were as friendly as they could be. These kids. They got me a birthday cake, and it's, you could tell that they were thinking about things. Just to wrap this up, I have come to believe that if we're talking about the larger structure of the universe, the actual bubble that Earth is a microscopic speck in. I think the evidence for that's unlikelihood, and the fact that I've come to believe that there's no longer, that time is an illusion, that time is our perception of travel through the fourth dimension. If time is our perception of travel through the fourth dimension, then the universe has always been here, will always be here, and it's not like it's always been there and it's constantly changing into something that will always be there. Its beginning and end have been created or appeared whole, and this is just us moving the needle down the groove of the record. You don't say when you play an LP, most kids don't even know what an LP is, but when you play an LP, you don't assume that everything in front of the needle, coming to the needle, doesn't exist yet. You know that the needle is simply a position on a record that's been pressed out, and at the front of the record, the back of the record, the order of the record, all of it is done. It's always been there. So if you imagine the universe as a record that has always been there, an LP, always been there, always will be there, always has been there. Who made it? I don't know. Who created it? I don't know. I don't know. Did it create itself? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. One of the things you get into in these really advanced levels of cosmology now, when you really get out into cosmology, you start to get into things in quantum and observation where you face the really interesting evidence, right? This isn't just theory, this is evidence. You observe something on a quantum level, it changes. The more you observe it, the more it changes. You observe two particles that are neutral and you make one observation, the other one instantly becomes the other, and it happens faster than the speed of light. That's been measured. That's pretty weird. So the idea that when you start to mix all this stuff up and look as far out as these monkey brains can, you begin to think that the universe is actually structured around information, that it's actually built around consciousness, and that you can make a compelling case mathematically through quantum interactions and the structure of things. You can make a compelling case that it's not like the universe existed and then life developed out of the universe, that the consciousness pre-existed everything, and that the universe had to take care of itself. The universe formed for the consciousness rather than consciousness just arose out of the universe. Structure of the universe may be information. And if it's information, it was created by a complex consciousness. And it doesn't matter what was there before then. Now, to take the other side of the argument, just so you know I can do these two things, I happen to think this is true too. Dawkins, who's a wizard. Dawkins is a brilliant guy when it comes to genetics and evolution. And The Selfish Gene is an incredible book and a real interesting way to look at creatures. But Dawkins says that if you're going to claim that the universe was created by God, then who made God? You have to go back a step, but you don't. The fact that he says who preceded God, who gave birth to God, what did God come from, how did he evolve, whatever, that is a blind spot in his thinking that limits him to being smart about genetics, but not very smart about religion and philosophy. This whole idea of before and after is almost impossible for us to shake, but I am getting some practice in it. And if you can understand that time is essentially an illusion, that we're the needle on the record, that yes, at the exact moment where we're talking right now, it's playing Summer Wind by Frank Sinatra, and he's right in the middle of this beat, and then he's going to go to the next beat. If you believe that, that's fine. But you can understand that where the needle is now is no more real or less real than any other part of the record. It just happens to be where the consciousness or the needle is right at this moment. So there is no before and after. You don't have to answer the question of where did God come from, or who existed before God, or who were God's parents, or what did God evolve from. You don't have to answer that, because the fact that you're asking the question in the first place is an indication that you're still thinking of before and after. And we simply do not have the brain power to understand infinity and eternity. We don't have the brain power. It's beyond our ability to emotionally connect to. We can intellectually do amazing things as a species, amazing things, like these theories, for example. But emotionally, you can't connect to the idea that there had to be a beginning, right? Well, you go back all that. No, there had to be a beginning. No, there has to be an end someday. No. The universe is expanding into what? Expanding into nothingness. What's on the other side of the expanding bubble of the universe? Nothing. You mean a vacuum? No, it doesn't. There's nothing. It doesn't exist. Can't handle it. You can't get there. I can't get there anyway. I can understand it intellectually, but emotionally, these are the kind of questions we ask because we're dealing with such a small slice of the actual universe. We're dealing with such a small visible spectrum. We're talking about a very limited range of sizes and very limited ranges of time scales and limited perception, and you just can't get there from here emotionally. But intellectually, you can walk yourself through this maze and say, yes, it's always been there. It's always going to be there. It was created and is in existence and will always be there. And if it's made out of information, then it's made out of consciousness. So here I am telling you that in my estimation, it's possible that the universe is nothing but chance. It seems extremely unlikely. But on the other hand, evolution has so much verifiable evidence that that no matter where the structure of the universe came from, the mechanism for biology on Earth is evolution through natural selection with messengers of DNA and gene selection. That's what I believe. That's what I think the evidence supports. And you have to tell people that you understand enough about the science to be able to say, now, on the other hand, global warming may be true, but you're going to have to do a lot better than what you're doing now. I told him, look, if you go stand in Kansas, which is, not the number one tourist destination in the world, but if you were to go put yourself right square in the middle of Kansas and stand out in a wheat field, you would be standing on a spot that 10,000 years ago was under almost a mile of ice, but 100 million years ago was under 100, 200 feet of water. That 200 million years ago, there was an inland sea right on the spot you're in now where Kansas is, and that there were plesiosaurs and pterodactyls and brachiosaurs there were T-Rexes or whatever running around on the shore, and there were ferns, and it was this golden paradise back when the CO2 levels were 3 times higher than they are now. Not 30%, but 3 times higher. And now this dusty plain of grass is what happens when CO2 levels get critically low to where they are now. So that's true. And if it's not true, and this would be my question too, right? I mean, if it's not true, then why are there seashells in Kansas? Not just how, but why? If it is in fact a 6,000-year-old Earth that was manufactured for man, why would God do something like that? Why would he put seashells and stuff in the middle of a continent and make sure that as you went down and dug deeper that everything happened consistently and that everything basically just kind of fits? Seems a little mean-spirited to me. But anyway, and people say, wish you could see the documentary Case for Creation, Case for a Creator. Look, as far as the creator goes, like I said, I've come a long way on this. I think you can make a compelling case about a creator. I think you can make a compelling case about the structure of the universe being too unlikely to have happened by random chance. But once it gets in there, the mechanism for life changing is really well understood, and so is the evidence for the age of the Earth. It's not just one thing, It's not like it's just somebody takes a shot out there. As the experiments become more refined, our date gets better, and now we're looking pretty much at a 13, 14 billion-year-old universe with stars that are evolving at a known rate out of clouds of interstellar gas, which were originally just hydrogen, these population 2 stars. And then as these stars explode after a process of nuclear fusion over the course of millions or billions of years, they create heavy elements in the core. These elements in the core are spread out when the star goes supernova. They form new nebulae, the new raw materials of other stars, and over time they gravitationally collapse and form younger stars like our sun, which is population 2 star. And because we are the product of 14 billion years, or 10 anyway, of stellar conversion of light elements into heavier ones as a byproduct of their fusion actions, there is enough carbon and phosphorus and calcium to make people and planets and all the rest of that stuff. So the age of the universe, the age of the Earth, radioactive decay, plate tectonics, evolution, expansion of the universe, all these measurements make sense. They're consistent and they're coherent, and they cross the boundaries. If the age of the Earth were determined to be one thing by biologists and determined to be something completely different by geologists, you'd have a real problem there. And likewise, if the expansion of the universe said that, no, it looks like this thing's only been blowing up for 3 million years, and then your evolutionary scientist said, well, we need 4.5 billion years or 3 billion years for this to happen, then you'd have a real problem. You'd have a real problem. But you don't, because they all match. So I think it's arrogant to say that the universe is not built in the way that it's built. I don't know the purpose or the mind, or if there was a purpose or a mind. But what I do know is, if there is a purpose or a mind, it is what it is, right? Certainly we can agree with this, that the Earth and the universe that we find ourselves in is what it is, and that we can ask questions and learn about it, that there are predictable laws and we can figure things out. So it is what it is. Why it is what it is a different question, but it is what it is. And since what it is contains a fossil record, and since what it is contains a redshift expansion and a measurable volume of space, and since what it is contains a radioactive decay at a certain rate and plate tectonics at a certain rate, it is what it is. It is those things. So that's telling you that it's something. So now, if on the other hand, this is why I think I'm in an interesting place and a somewhat interesting person. If on the other hand, well, that is true, and I believe it's true, then you run into people who make that their religious and philosophical beliefs, which I think is absolutely absurd. You know, when you hear people say, "What do you believe in?" I believe in science. That's absurd. That's a silly thing to say. It's not just throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It's never filling the tub. I mean, you can't say that all of this stuff is a philosophy or a religion, or provides moral support, or confirms or destroys any particular religious theory. It is an entirely separate domain. And for people to say that I believe in science means that they believe a religion that is a mechanistic religion. It's an atheistic, mechanistic, very material view of the world, and they perceive that belief system to be true because it conforms to the evidence in the world, and to some degree it does conform to the evidence of the world, but it only conforms to the evidence of the world if you look at the world through a cocktail straw. The things that are much bigger and much smaller and much older and much younger, all this stuff is a much more complex proposition than people like these secular humanists believe. And I ought to know, because I was one of them. I mean, I thought I had it all figured out. Nothing. No, I didn't have it all figured out. I understand the mechanisms of life on Earth and the changes in the Earth, and I understand the basic mechanisms of how stars form. But that's not religion, and that's not the final say. You start to get down into the quantum world and the supergravity world, and then things start happening that are evidence. There's evidence, experimental evidence, repeatable experimental evidence that comes back with the correct mathematical value, that says again and again and again and again and again and again and again, the structure of the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we can imagine. There are things that happen that we can observe that just don't make sense. And so we have to find a way to make sense out of them. And the fact that they don't make sense is an indication. The fact that they don't make sense and are true, that is an indication that the world is a lot more complex than these secular atheists give it credit for. A lot more complex. And that's why I find them to be as closed-minded as any other religious fundamentalist regarding the creation of this. In fact, I think they're far more closed-minded than religious fundamentalists, because I think religious fundamentalists hear the evolution argument and agree or disagree with it, but I don't think these people ever really understand the creation argument at all. Well, that was our money's worth, but that's what the show's all about. You never know when the rabbit goes into the hole. You never know what hole it's going to come out of. So there you go. I look at science as a tool, It's a scalpel. It can be an axe. It can be the most powerful, without question, the most powerful tool we have. It's a way about thinking about the physical world that predicts outcomes. And in that regard, it is extraordinarily powerful. But it's not a belief system. It's a tool. It's like people saying, I believe in a scalpel. What do you believe in? I believe in an axe. Seems odd. Science is not a belief system. And science is not a warehouse of knowledge like the big warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark where we store information. Science is a way of asking a very specific and narrow set of questions about nature and interrogating it in such a way as to remove as much bias as possible, and therefore, as long as we get consistent answers that are repeatable and match in terms of the expected values, tells us something that if it's not true, then the word true has no meaning. So there you go. So many people rebel against this. They have such an emotional reaction against evolution because the proponents of evolution are not using it as a theory. They're using it politically and they're using it religiously. They're using evolution as a means of destroying or discrediting religion, and that is not what evolution is or should be. And when I said that I run into either creationists or intelligent design people that ask a question in such a way that makes me believe that they do not understand the theory at all, likewise, I also run into people who make statements initially that show me that they do not understand anything about truth or anything about what's actually possible, what's actually going on. So it's a sword that cuts both ways. And look, when it's all said and done, this is what I believe. But I would say one of the skills that I have is the ability to weigh evidence. If my entire personal history is anything, and my conversion to, well, I was naturally conservative. I wanted to shoot down communists at supersonic speeds. It's pretty much as American as it gets. But having been a liberal and having been a conservative, I can tell you that the level of information I have on these things is not equal. That when I was a liberal, I knew nothing about anything. Now that I'm a conservative, I know everything about everything. And I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. And so they're not equal states. And I think the ability to see, I remember where I was going with this, just to wrap the show up. I often thought it would be fun to do a show on conspiracy theories and to say which ones are completely untrue, impossible, which ones are unlikely, and which ones are actually open possibilities. For example, the Loch Ness Monster is impossible. Bigfoot is exceedingly unlikely, but not demonstrably impossible in the way that an air-breathing plesiosaur that never comes up for air is. The Loch Ness Monster is demonstrably impossible. The Apollo moon landing conspiracy is demonstrably impossible. All you have to do is look at the dust coming off of the rover. Why would you, if you went once, if it was a fake and you went once for Apollo 11, why would you go again? And why on earth would you bring a wheeled vehicle that would let you cover miles and miles and miles of this interior, perfectly lit studio? It just doesn't make any sense at all. The idea that the moon landing is faked is absolutely absurd on its face. You just look at the dust that comes off of the astronaut's shoes or off of the rover, and you'll see that the dust sprays like water, and it sprays like water in a 1/6 gravity field, and it doesn't form clouds, and that will not do it anywhere other than on a low gravity field in a vacuum. And anybody that knows anything will tell you it is easier to go to the moon than it is to make a perfect vacuum in an area the size of a gigantic stadium. But again, it doesn't make sense. Why would you go back to the moon with a car and explore all of these incredible areas if you were trying to fake it? Why? Doesn't make any sense. So the moon landing is absolutely true. The Loch Ness Monster is absolutely false. The idea that the World Trade Center was brought down by controlled explosions is absolutely false. It's not false because there's not enough evidence for it. It's false on its face. It is logically impossible. The whole 9/11 conspiracy thing is logically impossible. But one thing that I'll give you that just is pretty compelling example is People say it was brought down by an explosion. What makes you say that? Well, you can see the thing coming out of the floors. You can see the explosion. It's like, that's not explosives. There's no flash of light in there. It's, as a floor comes down, it's compressing that floor and it's blowing the air out through the windows. That's all it is. No, it was brought down by controlled explosions. Okay, here's the deal. Have you ever seen a building brought down by explosions? Have you ever seen anybody actually so-called implode a building before? Yeah, I see it on Discovery Channel. Okay, I've seen it on Discovery Channel too. First of all, the tallest buildings that they've done that for is 40 or 50 stories. They're not 100 stories, but put that aside because that's not terribly relevant. When you prepare a building to be imploded, brought down by explosives, it takes months because you don't just put a sack of dynamite in the corner and blow it up. In order to do this, to bring a building vertically straight down, you have to first of all remove all of the walls, all of the drywall, all of the asbestos, all of the wood, all of that insulation. That all has to come off, and you have to get in there, and you have to get to the actual steel support beams, and then you have to weld holes in these steel support beams and place these exquisitely designed shaped charges in such a way that when it blows, it's going to cut through the steel beam. And they all have to go off simultaneously if you want to bring it straight down and create a small footprint as possible. And so in order to prep a 20-story building, this takes 2 or 3 months. In order to prep a 100-story building would probably take 6 months. And in order to prep 200-story buildings, it would take a year. And when you bring one of these buildings down through controlled explosions, you will see hundreds, if not more, lines of detonation cord coming out of this. And that when they fire that thing off, you'll see that these things go right down the detonation cords, go up into the various parts of the thing. They have to be timed exactly right, and boom. So my question is, if it turns out it was brought down by a controlled explosion, and since the World Trade Center is open 24 hours a day, and since this was a Tuesday, and since the people had been at work on Monday, are you trying to tell me that 2 or 3 guys in black cat suits were able to rig both buildings in 24 hours? Who am I kidding, 24 hours? In 8 hours while people are gone? That they were able to pull all of this stuff off of all the walls and then plant these charges and then hide the det cord where? Where do the detonation cords get hidden? Do they get hidden in the walls? Do they get hidden under the carpets? Everything has to be put back in place. No dust on the floor, on every one of the floors, on both buildings. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And there's no reason to have this theory. It's not like there's not another theory. My theory is a couple of Muslims hijacked a plane and flew a giant flying fuel tank into a building, and then after a couple hours, it came down. And by the way, since I finally got a little religion here, I'm a little wound up. I had an argument with somebody who was a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. And you know what I said that actually convinced them? They said, I never thought about that. That's actually, I think you got a good case here. It was so simple that it really surprised me because I thought you really had to get into the whole thing. I'll get to WT's World Trade Center 7 if somebody wants to know for a second. But what I said to them was, no, the most compelling and obvious evidence that it's true is this. The building that got hit first lasted the longest. The building that got hit second went down first. Why is that? Well, as it turns out, the building that got hit first got hit higher up, and the building that got hit second got hit lower. And that's why it went down first, because the building that got hit second, when the plane went in, went then 20 or 30 stories lower, which meant that there's 30 stories more of weight above the second impact than there was above the first impact. And since there's that much more weight above the fault area, there's that much more downward pressure on the fault line, and that's why it collapsed first. And she said, that actually makes a lot of sense. I never really thought of it that way. No one's ever said that before. Of course not, because it's perfectly logical. Perfectly logical. Somebody said, well, what about World Trade Center 11? It collapsed on its own. I'm going to do a conspiracy show because I just like getting into this frame of mind. Collapsed on its own. You remember after the towers came down and the outside sheets of the World Trade Center were that kind of corrugated vertical thing, and that sticking into the ground were these giant forks of tons and tons and tons of steel that had embedded themselves vertically into the ground as this giant thing came down. Well, when you bring 100 stories, 200 stories of buildings with the kind of surface down, the building next to it is going to take extreme damage. It's going to take severe damage. And they've had videos of fires that were burning in World Trade Center 7 since the moment the first attack started. And you combine that kind of damage and that kind of fire, when you think about essentially 200 stories of concrete scissors coming down on a building, it's not inconceivable that the building would collapse. And by the way, the firemen went in there and said, this building is not safe. It's not going to last. Let's get out of here. And several hours later, down it went. So where was the dead cord in there? Where was all this stuff? It's just absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. No. 9/11 was not an inside job. We did land on the moon. There is no Loch Ness Monster. There almost certainly is no Bigfoot, but you can't disprove Bigfoot the way you can disprove the Loch Ness Monster. The Fed may, in fact, have been created by dark forces, and there may, in fact, be dark forces running our money supply. I think it's unlikely, but it's certainly possible. It is well in the realm of possibility. UFOs are exceedingly unlikely. It just doesn't seem to pass the smell test. There is... By the way, the best evidence against Bigfoot is the fact that the best picture of Bigfoot was a fake. The best picture of him, the only real picture of him, was a fake. What does that tell you? UFOs as a vehicle for extraterrestrial intelligence, I think chance that's about zero. Pretty much zero. I can't prove that it's zero. The theory could be correct. I can't disprove it, but I don't have to disprove it. The evidence for it is minuscule. All of the best UFO pictures were fake. The only really good picture of the Loch Ness Monster was fake. What does that tell you? But I cannot disprove UFOs, but I don't have to disprove it. Life is simple, and you're going to have to prove that it actually is something, and you can't prove that they exist. Crop circles don't prove anything. They just don't prove anything. They prove that somebody can go out there with a piece of wood and a string and stamp down wheat. That's all that proves. So I just think that's an interesting thing, this idea of comparing conspiracy theories. And the reason I think it's interesting is because it does give you some good exercise at weighing logic and weighing evidence. Is there evidence for UFOs? Yes, there's a series of photographs. Is there other evidence? There's circles on the ground. Okay, let's start looking at the photographic evidence. Turns out that the photographic evidence is poor. Virtually non-existent. It turns out that the circles are fake, and most of the pictures are fake. It tells me that it doesn't exist. That's not to say that people don't see things that they genuinely believe don't exist in the sky. I think I told you, I've said it a bunch of times before. It's really one of my favorite stories, though, because it woke me up an awful lot. I actually believed in UFOs quite a bit. In 1977, we did a show in Planetarium about... in conjunction with the releasing of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And during a period of about a year or two there, I thought, it's really real, and we're going to see them. Because that movie was so compelling. I had friends who were astronomers, junior astronomers, who went out into the Everglades and said they saw lights moving at right angles and stuff. And so they said, come on out. And I went out. And we sat there all night and didn't see anything. And just at the last minute, literally, as sun was coming up and it was starting to get bright in the sky, this guy said, there it is. And I'm looking at it. I said, that's a satellite. He says, don't you see it moving left and right? I said, it's not moving left and right, Tony. It's moving in a perfectly straight line. Just hysteria. My favorite part was being on the observatory roof and seeing these V-shape of oval flying saucers appear over Miami. I mean, just look up in the sky and there's these V of 7 on a side, ovals, glowing ovals, flying in formation overhead. I saw it. Everybody else on the roof of the observatory saw it. There were probably 30 of us that saw it. And people were screaming. They were simply screaming. They were out of their minds. They'd seen a leprechaun, and there he was. And I wasn't the one who found it. I wish I had, but somebody said, no, they're geese. I said, what? I said, no, look, if you look carefully, you can see they're geese. And sure enough, once you started looking at it carefully, you could see that what you were seeing was the white bellies of geese that were being lit from all of the streetlights in Miami. But if you look carefully, you could in fact see the much darker wings and the much darker neck. And they were in fact a flock of geese flying over Miami. And when I pointed it out to people, they lost their minds. They just hated me for it. So UFOs, no, I don't think so. Somebody mentioned the TWA flight. Was it 400 or 800, whatever? See, now that's an example. Not an unreasonable guy. TWA flight has some evidence that seems to be convincing, but the main thing is there's nothing in the theory that it was shot down by a missile that is impossible on its side, on its on its own. There's nothing impossible inherent in the theory that it was brought down by a surface-to-air missile. I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. And it is much more likely than the idea that aliens from another planet came here in vehicles the size of a Volkswagen bus, and one of them flew into a hill in Roswell, New Mexico, and left as much wreckage as an exploded Jiffy Pop can. So the TWA flight evidence is much better. I still don't think it's compelling, but I don't know much about that one. So yeah, I'm open-minded to that. Anybody else have anything else they want to toss out? I just don't think that this is, to me it's fun. It's fun trying to figure out what could be true, what is true, and what is clearly not true. And frankly, that's a skill that you might want to have in the world, because that certainly informs my politics. And there we go. Now, Aesop just said, why do aliens need to be from another planet? That's actually a very astute question. It's a very astute question. It's such an astute question that we realized that by saying what I said, I built in assumptions into the statement. There's been some talk that UFOs are the result of time travelers from this planet. But again, it takes an awful lot more complexity to imagine time travelers flying through the skies when so many of these pictures have been faked and so many of them are just distant objects. And I think this is very compelling too, is that during the 1900s there were reports all across the world in the country of ghost dirigibles that weren't there. People saw blimps in the sky at night. And then earlier than that, there were talks about people seeing flying chariots or weird things like that. It's interesting how the evolution of the visions changed as the actual technology around the witnesses changed. I think that's a fairly compelling case that they imagined it. And when I say imagined it, I don't mean that in a bad way. Somebody asked about leprechauns, and I'll close this because I've been talking way too much, and you've heard all this before anyway. But anyway, when I say imagined it, I don't mean they're crazy, and I don't mean that they're lying. Some of them are clearly lying. The people that make the phony, the surgeon's photo of the Loch Ness Monster, that guy carved a miniature Loch Ness Monster, put it out in the water, took a picture of it. He's obviously lying. The person that made the Bigfoot suit of the Bigfoot looking over his shoulder with a zipper in it, that person's lying. The people that make false footprints of Bigfoot are lying. Those people are lying, but most people are probably seeing things that they can't explain. And there's a lot of things out there that are tough to explain. It's an interesting litmus test for your ability to look at things skeptically, and to make decisions about what's true and what's not in the physical world. But yeah, the idea that maybe, again, Aesop's Retreat says we have no idea of who lives in the deep parts of the oceans. True, but there's no evidence at all, none, zero, that there is a second intelligent technological society at the bottom of the ocean. We've been to the bottom of the ocean, I don't know, we've explored 1/400th of the bottom of the ocean, so you can make a case that, yes, there's an awful lot of unexplored stuff out there, but you can also make the case that, it's not provably false, but there's no evidence for it. We haven't gone to the bottom of the ocean and ever seen anything to give us an indication that there was anything other than mud down there, ever. And so why would I believe that there are a second super intelligent race living underneath the ocean? I can't prove it's not real, but I don't have to. I can't prove that my cat doesn't go to Venus every night and a flying saucer picks him up at the window, flies him out to Venus, and he roams around out there a little bit and orbits the planet, comes back, and is always in bed in time by the time I wake up. I can't prove that didn't happen, but I don't have to. Atlantis. Victoria asked about Atlantis. Now, Atlantis is fascinating. Atlantis is a great one because Atlantis, I think, is pretty clearly a convergence of magical thinking, but combined with some kind of historical cause. Best explanation of Atlantis that I've ever heard was that the Atlantis myth is based on the island of Thera, which is now called, I think, Santorino or Santorino. There is a volcanic caldera in the Aegean Sea. It's a crescent, and it used to be a cone. And when this thing blew up, they blew it up. Damn you, you blew it up. It made Krakatoa look like a firecracker. Made Pompeii and Vesuvius look like a firecracker. This entire island just exploded because it was a volcanic island, and it was in the Aegean. And the idea of a giant flood, and the idea of a giant rain of fire, and of a civilization disappearing beneath the waves has some evidence behind it. It wasn't. There's no evidence that it was this advanced civilization, but people lived there, I'm sure. So there's something behind that. I don't think it's this mysterious thing. And by the way, since we're on this subject, and since we're probably going to just push this until I'm tired of it, because it's a nice thing about having your own show. What does it say when people have to invoke anti-gravity and flying saucers and other miracles, including space aliens, to explain the Great Pyramids of Giza, or the pyramids the Incas made, or any of that stuff? What does it say about somebody who has to invoke those things? If somebody came to this planet from a vastly superior civilization to the one that we live in now, you would think that if they wanted to leave a remember me by, they could do better than a giant pile of rocks. One of my favorite essays ever, I turned it into a video, but it was one of my favorite essays ever was to compare 7-Eleven with the Great Pyramid of Giza. And how the 7-Eleven, a standard routine one of 10,000 7-Elevens, that any given 7-Eleven is orders and orders and orders of magnitude more impressive than the pyramids. A 7-Eleven has electricity. It's got glass. It's got air conditioning. It's got Oreo cookies. It has aspirin. It has a TV camera. It's got a laser scanning device to pick up your prices on the things. It's got microphones and television and telephones. It's got on printed paper news from around the world that existed only a day ago. And if the guy's got an internet connection, it's information that happened seconds ago. It's got Snickers bars. It's lit at night. A 7-Eleven in every single way is much, much, much more impressive than a giant pile of rocks. It's just absolutely orders of magnitude more complex than a big pile of rocks. It's an impressive pile of rocks. I don't want to take anything away from the guys that made it. It took, generations, and it's impressive, but it is a pile of rocks. And the idea that we have to invoke flying saucers and aliens and anti-gravity beams to explain the pile of rocks? Really? Come on. It's got Slurpees, exactly right. T-Dog Lyle says it's got Slurpees. It's got cherry Slurpees, and that closes the argument as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. It's amazing. Yeah, I talked about Pharaoh going to a 7-Eleven and just how spooked Pharaoh would be by the idea that he could stand behind a piece of glass. He'd never seen glass before. And the idea that Pharaoh could stand behind the door or behind one of the windows in the 7-Eleven and have servants throw water at him and have him flinch and have the water just be arrested in midair, just stopped in midair by something, and then slide down would be beyond his comprehension. I talked about having aspirin. Most of these, the Egyptians, I did a planetarium show. Jack Horkheimer did a planetarium show. He picked up some mummies. He's an odd guy, that Jack. He really was an amazingly eclectic guy. He bought a couple of mummies, and he bought them for the planetarium in the Museum of Science. So we had these two actual Egyptian mummies outside in the lobby, and he did a show on Egyptian astronomy. But since he's such a natural showman, he took the mummies down and had them x-rayed. And typical, you find all the things you would expect to find from primitive peoples, pretty poor nutrition and kind of bad scoliosis on one of them, certainly, and all these other things. But one thing he found out, and I'd never heard it before, I'm not saying he discovered it, but one thing he discovered was that both of these mummies had incredible abscesses in their jaws where their teeth were. That what was left of their teeth were just stumps, and that they had enormous holes in their jaw where infection and abscess had continued for years and years and years and years and years. And when Jack started investigating that, what he found out was that the Egyptians living in a desert ingested so much sand that sand got into the baking of every loaf of bread that they ate. That every time they took some wheat and laid it out and rolled it and baked it, that sand was getting in there, and they basically were eating sandpaper. And over the course of time, they eroded their teeth enamel down, and some of these people probably died of toothaches. They probably died of them. I mean, horrific physical evidence of these jaw abscesses from what must have been 10, 15 years of just daily agony. And to go to a 7-Eleven, Pharaoh would go to a 7-Eleven and have an aspirin, and to come out of pain for a little while, or even have it reduced. I mean, what would he pay for that? He'd kill legions to get that. Kill legions to give his son a Snickers bar, a Coca-Cola. So anyway, I like these kind of thought experiments. I like them a lot. I think they're really fun. And I think at this point I'm going to call this one a day at 2 hours and 20 minutes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's not a bad show. So, ladies' night, as you know, we start off with questions about what's your favorite drink, and we end up talking about evolution and UFOs and stuff. But that's what makes this show work or not work, depending on the case. So if you just got in, or if you got in late, the big announcement was that PJTV has announced that they're going to stop all of their programming, that next week will be the final week of taping. PJTV website will exist till May 11th, and then everything will get forwarded to PJ Media's video page, but they are done. No more Afterburner, no more Trifecta, no more Scott Thought, none of that. And the good news is, if you got here late, just to recap, is that once we heard the news, which was yesterday, it was the 12th, Scott and Steve and I immediately got on the phone, and we said, a lot of people like Trifecta, let's keep it going. So we're going to keep it going. And if we can move some of the PJTV members from PJTV over to our site, we can stay at it and do it forever. If not, then we can't. And if not, I don't know if I can keep doing this. That's a big hunk of my income. So anyway, there you go. I'm convinced we'll do it, and I'm convinced you'll help. So for those of you who are members, as always, my eternal gratitude and thanks for your patience and your support. And for those of you that aren't, now would be the time, because now we don't have to just pay for me. I got to pay for these two other guys who are really talented and real patriots and make a great show. So, yeah, all right. Rest in peace, PJTV. Troy Stevens said that. It's true. It was 8 great years, and we did incredible work over there. And I'm really proud of the work I did there. And we're all going to do a final show. I'm going to do a farewell afterburner, because it's farewell. We're going to do 3 final trifectas, and all of them will be steering people over to BillWhittle.com, because we're set up to take money there and produce video. So that's the latest if you got in late. I spent the first 20 minutes talking about that or something like that. But if you can help us, we would certainly appreciate it, and we're actually going to need it. So there you go. For our paying members, I'm always grateful. And for the rest of our fans and friends out there who put up with the show, who may disagree with me on some things, on all things, on nothing, it's good to be talking with such high-quality people. I like arguing with people who are intelligent and respectful. I learn a lot of things that way. So that'll do it, I think, for this one. I'm going to click up the incoming Stratosphere Lounge banner, and then I'm going to hit the dissolve button, then I'm going to turn off the microphone, and then I'm going to stop the recording. And if you're on YouTube, that pretty much will be there. Yes, the PJTV YouTube channel will stay in place essentially forever. So anything that's up there now on YouTube is going to be there. So there we go. All right, thanks for joining us. It was a fun show. Episode 117's in the can, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.